So, hello everybody. This is the first meeting with our new time scale, the new planning. Please try it out for a couple of months and let us really see if it works. It's working. That's what I felt also. One good thing. Then the second point is not many announcements. The election went off very smoothly. Good number of people voting at the last minute agreed. So what? Makes it more interesting. And for the first time, if you actually go through the details of the voting has been spread over a lot of books, unusually. Usually we used to find 2 or 3 books getting all the votes and nobody else bothering about anything else. That has not happened this time. It was a very close race till the last minute, honestly. Makes it very interesting if you are following it as a race. And I personally think we got the 2 really good books going for the next 2 months. Let's see how it goes. Then the pardon? I will finish I'll finish it and then anybody can. Whichever way, I leave it to you. You can choose. Then go in order itself. Okay. Now, shall I start? Good. The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. A real brick of a book. 700 plus pages. Scary till you start reading and then you are immersed and hooked once you start. I realized as soon as I finished the book that trying to review it, I will create another brick. So I am not even going to attempt it. Just come out with some of my impressions and you can fill in. I can't talk everything. What else? What will others talk? I just want to give points, maybe questions. Story of epic proportions, spanning 70 years, 3 generations. That said, I loved reading the book. It's an effortless, fast and absorbing read. And very immersive, the author takes you there, makes you feel the scenes, feel everything. The beginning of the book, Bigamachi, the young bride, looks at a new home. It is a child's fantasy world of rivulets and canals, a latticeworks of lakes and lagoons, a maze of backwaters and bottle green lotus ponds, a vast circulatory system, because as a father used to say, all water is connected. This took me back. I have spent 2 years in Kerala in the 1960s when it was really Kerala. You should know how it looked then and how it looks now. What a difference. You cannot but fall in love with that country. So beautiful it was. No doubt about it, and it took me back there. I think this connectedness, the sense of family that extends far beyond those related by blood, has been well developed by the author. What do you think? It's a subject you can talk about. Did you find it difficult to keep track of the characters and events as the story progresses? I did. We can discuss that. Too many convenient coincidences. Very cinematic almost. And then Digby, who says he felt oppressed in Glasgow, but the oppressor here. Lovely statement, very deep meaning. But this angle was not elaborated or developed, I felt, by the author. It is a very powerful angle which author just mentions and forgets it after that. Opportunity missed, I think. Oppressed in Glasgow, but oppressor here. He mentioned it and that's it. It is a very, very powerful subject. Do you think by looking at the past through such a wide lens, the story really papers over the serious realities? Child marriage, but the child bride warms to her husband 30 years her senior. high caste and low caste manage to live together as a family, a revolutionary who regrets its past. All big things, have they been covered sufficiently? They have been mentioned, brought out, and then sort of left hanging. It would have become 2 bricks maybe if he wanted to do all that. Did you notice that most characters have a fantastic temperament? Seemingly ahead of their times. Throughout the story, the corrupt are always punished. Forgiveness is begged and granted. The nefarious ones redeem themselves. Griefs are overcome and rifts reconciled in a few chapters. Just like that. I felt that the feel good felt a bit too good after some point. It was too sweet. I am saying that I felt the feel good felt a bit too good after a point. Too much of it was happening. And that's what I want you to talk about. Do you think the condition was explained and sorted out properly? The condition is supposed to be the central subject in the book. This is too big a book to analyze in detail, so I am only raising questions. The Guardian report says it all, really says it all. The Covenant of Water is an important book for its efforts in documenting times and places most readers would be too young to have witnessed. I wasn't, so I can say that. It is also a tribute to the scientific progress that has made human lives healthier and the sacrifices made by previous generations. As one of the characters with the condition says, the voyage of discovery isn't about new lands but having new eyes. Who wants to go next?
Okay.
It doesn't happen.
So no hand gestures. Okay. I am Khalil. The first meeting I attended was 2 months back. I attended that meeting, but I hadn't read the book. I promised to read the book next time, but I forgot to promise that I'll also make it to the meeting. I did read the book, I didn't make it to the meeting. And again, this time I have read part 1, I haven't finished it. One of these days, I'll get both of them together. And that is the time I will give you a review of the book. Thanks.
Hi. I started the book with gusto. I just enjoyed I understood the flow of the book, went up to the middle of the story. I found towards the end a lot of things happening. Like, I'm not very familiar with medical jargon. A lot of it was confusing for me, and a lot of tragedies. Too many things were happening with one after the other, and perhaps she was doomed. This girl was doomed for throughout the story. So that was sad. There's but there is socialism, communism, the development of socialism, communism. All these factors. According to the history of the state, slowly they have recognized and brought it out. He has brought it out very well. Towards the end, it was very dramatic, I felt. I don't know whether anybody else felt that, because how she was rediscovered and how, and I was just speaking to somebody, and I also know that the end of the book is left without any, finished, in the sense that those who spend so much of time with lepers, they do tend to get some kind of infection at some point, that's what I've read. And he spends physically a lot of time with her over the few years. So I don't know, though he says it's not infectious, but there is the element of infection which is bound to happen. That part of it they weren't able to speak.
He says that she immunity lost, isn't it, due to the second pregnancy, and she could have picked up. That's what it says.
And remember her feet, even when she was in that.
She got it before the pregnancy.
Yeah. Her legs, her feet were very dry. All that. I didn't relate it to this at all. I was just wondering why is she walking barefoot around. And the death of a young child was very bizarre, I felt.
It's a bacterial infection.
Yes.
And it can happen to anybody at any time.
Anytime.
Depends on how much you are resistant.
Resistance.
Each person is totally different. The resistance is
But
totally
where she wasn't having any lepers around,
No, she
Not
could
needed.
be in the atmosphere. It could be in
The water. Even water droplets, they say. So maybe the title of the story and that is related also. Correct.
Because most of those symptoms are not due to leprosy, they happen and you don't control them. It becomes worse. Not because of leprosy, because you don't realize that you are having that problem, like pain.
Yeah,
Your fingers cut, you don't notice it.
correct.
So you have to be very careful to see that nothing damages your hands.
It was pretty sad because we get to know. Multiple stories, multiple people's lives are connected in some form or the other, from different class of life also. Lenin was another character which was very born in that particular manner. I was just thinking, imagining a baby, a mother's stomach with the hand out of this. I mean, I don't know whether these things happen, but he had created that character right from then itself. And then he had a very sad life afterward. I mean, he was always a refugee. So there were a lot of little things which is interesting. I mean, you can read the book, though it's 700 pages, you can start and finish the book. That was my take on it.
Very simply, I love the book. I absolutely love the book. I love the book because there is a pattern that goes in a linear direction that all of us can see. But there's another line that took me on an inward journey, which made me question things about myself. I cried over the book. I'm not a person who cries. Even at cry-worthy events, I don't cry. I'm unable to cry. But I find tears filling my eyes. I laughed uproariously at the translation of that, the Christian thing. That was very humorous. And the last time I felt like this was when I read Gone with the Wind and Little Women. So in comparing it to that, I think Dr. Verghese is fantastic. The other reason I like it very much is all the questions that you're asking leads us to this point that it is open to personal interpretation. And any book that opens us to personal interpretation is a fantastic book. All knots need not be tied. Shakespeare is the most famous person to do this. I'm just going to stop there because I think oh yes, one last thing. Whether Dr. Verghese confesses to it or not, I think his religious background has had a huge effect on him, because I found a lot, besides the very open biblical quotes, I found Digby Kilger to be a very biblical character. And the whole point that he's almost Christ-like of stature in his willingness to help people. The way he sorrows over their sorrows, the way he empathizes, he becomes them, he loves them. And love is a huge emotion that I think is very difficult for me to understand at that level. The symbolic gesture of washing Elsie's feet becomes important because, as you will know, that was Christ's first act where he washed before he went on to the cross. He washed the disciples' feet and then went on his journey to the cross. Digby's cross is Elsie's leprosy. So that's enough from me. And now I'm very honored to read Prem Sori Kishore's review. As I write this review, I'm surrounded by water. Rivulets, puddles, and plopping raindrops, now and then a burst of showers. But elsewhere in my city of Los Angeles and beyond, there are heavy rains, flash floods, mudslides, and the perfect storm since 1890. Schools are closed and we are not allowed on the roads the whole of today. The atmospheric setting for my review of the Covenant of Water. First line, I skimmed. Okay. 717 pages? Daunting. I lost track of some of the characters, especially Digby, whom I fancied and interested me very much. He disappeared and other characters popped in and out of what was to me a very random way. It became tedious and a strain to keep track. Digby, Elsie, Celeste, Amachi, Joe, Dozens of characters make exits and entrances. There is even an elephant called Damodran. Perhaps my age has a lot to do with it. One tragedy begets another. I am not a believer in curses, and therefore the idea of each generation losing a member of the family by drowning was not only far-fetched, but a terrifying world of no hope. The minute details of illnesses made me squeamish, and I have worked in a hospital where I constantly interacted with nurses and doctors, listened to gory details of surgeries, but the author's determination to craft whole paragraphs about a pustule made me squirm. I delighted in the first 100 pages as it was written with great love of the region, and the prose was lyrical and, Geeta, please help me with the page. Yeah. And lyrical, and it nurtured personal imaginings. At times, a single phrase or sentence made me marvel, I have to confess. It is a sprawling book, but not for me. My friends, a couple of them Americans, were besotted with the book because it opened up new worlds for them. One Indian friend of mine did not want the book to end and slowed down her pace of reading. However, I might try to read the narration. I did listen to an excerpt, and I must say Dr. Verghese is a superb narrator and helped me enthrall. I'm a very diligent voice critic, as I am a narrator myself, but Verghese is in love with his book when he reads. That worked for me.
Like Lakshmi, I loved the book. Can you make it? Yeah, okay. Like Lakshmi, I loved the book. I couldn't stop reading, and both of us kept messaging each other at what page we went. We were trying to beat each other all the time. So it was fun reading it. But the ending was a bit too dramatic. I don't know why it was that. I still can't fathom the ending. Actually, I feel it could have been better. But that's my opinion. And my husband's reading it now because he knows Verghese through his Royal College and everything. And he's finding holes with every medical thing he's written here, actually. And he says a leper having intercourse can't lead you not to have, you will definitely have leprosy. That's not even an option. And to live in the home for that long and not get it is not even an option. He says that close proximity, treating them, and in those days where gloves went very good and everything, so you are guaranteed to get it. So he says that can't be the case, that Digby didn't catch it. So he says he should have been dead already. So that was a bit so I had that in the background of reading. So that was also fun, but it was nice to see the medical college, Madras Medical College, written so much about, because dad's from that, my sister's from that, Sam's from that. So it was lovely actually, because I feel like I was in that college, because many a thing that dad has said was all written there in those times. So it was very nice. So thoroughly enjoyed this book. Whose choice was it? I wanted to know.
I nominated it.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Upasana. I had absolutely loved and recommended Mr. Abraham Verghese's earlier book, Cutting for Stone. I must have told so many people about it, and it's still there somewhere in the back of my mind. And so when I saw this book and I saw Oprah, who I adore, recommended it, and plus Madras, I said, okay, I have to get this one for sure. I'm so glad my intuition proved right, because I absolutely love this book. I want to shout it from the rooftops. And for the first time, I review books on my Instagram. I used to do it on Facebook. I love the book so much that I made not one, but I made 2 reels for it, because I had so much to say about it. So, and I also mentioned in my review, if you read one book this year, make sure this is the one. I know some of you all didn't like it, but nevertheless. I found the characters very real. I feel you carry them with you. Like now when you mention Lenin, I'm like, oh my God, yes, Lenin, I mean, you tend to like suddenly remember it's like some long lost cousin of yours. It had everything. I think he touched upon a lot of things: romance, shock, awe, inspiration, social issues. Like, I know I was reading and there was this one, but I was lying down like this and reading, and I was like, oh my God. And my daughter's like, what happened? I said, somebody died. How could he kill this kid? And I was like, no. So, and that happens very rarely with me. I highlighted so much in this book, so it was lovely. The wedding scene with Samuel, I found that it's reminiscent of the movie The Elephant Whisperer. I don't know why I'm thinking of them, and I just love that scene, the way he stands outside, but he still goes to take the couple goes to take their blessings. I found it very, very sweet. And another very memorable scene for me is where Big Amachi passes along with baby Mole. I'm a special needs parent. So this is something that we all worry about, after me what. So in fact, that was like the perfect, you may think I'm sounding very crude and rude, but that's the perfect solution, So, and that scene where Elsie holds his hands and draws and it's healing, it's like a movie, you can just see it, and somehow when that scene came with the woman in the white sari, I just knew it was Elsie. I mean, something just told me that's it. And I can just envision corridors. I think mainly because of this love for Chennai that everything is falling in place. Many years ago, one of our helpers at home, when I was very young, we had gone to the doctor and the doctor said, oh, she may have leprosy. And it just terrified me, I remember, And of course, our smart parents, didn't address it or anything. So I remember that whole night I was awake wondering, oh my God, because it's such a taboo, So that was a real eye-opener, what he said. He revealed about leprosy, and again, it's fiction, so I guess we have to take it with a pinch of salt. I'm just going to share a few of the quotes that I really loved. He says, the sight of suffering is familiar. Its language transcends all borders. There's so much weight in that. And then another line is, secrecy lives in the same rooms as loneliness. I mean, it's just such a simple line, but it's so beautiful. And roses would be annoying weeds if the blooms never withered and died. Beauty resides in the knowledge that it doesn't last. The only thing I did not like in the whole book was when he called Madras a colorless city. And that was the only thing I was like. But he's a gem of a man. Every time I comment or send him a message on Instagram, he at least likes the message. He's shared all my Instagram stories, so I'm smitten. The author, yes. The author, yeah. And I keep telling him to do an Instagram live with me, so I hope that comes true someday. And I meet him, that's it.
So hi, I am Purva for the recording. I did not much care for this. Guys, sorry. So for the recording, I am Purva, and I did not much care for the book for reasons that are more about me than it. So honestly, reading this book made me wonder if there was an element of masochism to loving literary fiction, because quite frankly, every piece of that venerable genre I have ever read has felt like a punishment. And it feels like sometimes the point of these books is the point of literary fiction as a genre is to make us grateful that however terrible our own lives may be, we're still better off than the poor sods on the page. It felt like that reading The Covenant of Water. There is a wonderful book somewhere in there, don't get me wrong, but it's drowned, no pun intended, in a sea of excessive characters, unnecessary subplot, and suffering upon suffering for the main characters with no lightness to break it up. There's a joke. How do you know if somebody is vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Vegan. Don't worry, they'll tell you. And Verghese's day job should come as no surprise to readers. Medical procedures are certainly described in enough vivid and off-putting detail, and they add absolutely nothing to the book except the desire to put it down. This is not to say that the book is completely unredeemable. The core conceit of a family that loses members to drowning is a fascinating one. and Verghese does have a deft touch with words. His descriptions of Kerala are lovely, as are many of his character moments, like with Digby and the young Elsie. Also, unlike other Indian writers in English, looking at you, Chitra Devakruni Banerjee, he strikes a good balance between writing for the outsider and assuming the native reader will understand. I especially I did love the various characters, especially Big Amachi and Digby Kilger. He also does an excellent job of threading history through the narrative, as well as showing us the complicated reality of race, caste, and class in India and an empire, and the way different people navigate it. As good as his writing is, though, I didn't need 700 pages of it. This would have been a far better book if only there had been a third less of it. Immediately after reading The Covenant of Water, I picked up a romance novel. While it may not have been the better book, it was definitely the more enjoyable experience. Which brought me to a realization. I honestly don't enjoy small, unhappy, ordinary stories about the banal lives of small, ordinary people with no happy endings. Give me escapism, give me larger than life heroes and heroines and plots with actual heft to them. Give me the guarantee of a happy ending. Give me stories infused with joy and hope rather than pain and suffering. And this is not a slight on people who love the book. I am very glad you all did. It's just that I've realized that literary fiction novels like this one, they're a bit like green capsicum. And the thing is, I hate green capsicum. So no matter how talented the chef, no matter how good the quality of the produce, I am still going to hate any dish with green capsicum in it. So I will leave all of the green capsicum for all of you and retreat to my fantasy and romance with much pleasure.
Sorry, I'm just going to say one thing. One thing for everyone other than Purva. Do listen if you get a chance to the podcast of Oprah and Dr. Abraham talking. It's beautiful, beautiful. He talks about his religion and a lot of things. It's beautiful. Sorry? Yeah. I think it's on Spotify, I know. I don't know, but not YouTube.
I have read only 269 pages.
Okay, we go on.
These characters are anything but small. Anything but small. They are huge. These Big Amachi is a kid who is just running an estate. The doctors are doing things which are unimaginable for ordinary human people to do. I mean, everybody is a hero over here. Even Samuel is fantastic. So I don't think they're small.
It felt like listening to family gossip, which I didn't care for. That was the fundamental problem. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to understand why you brought up about this vegan.
So let me repeat my joke.
They're on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm sending the link.
Yeah. I was jokingly saying that how do you know somebody is vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Because in fairness, it's a bit of a mean joke and a stereotype about vegans that they're always happy to evangelize. So I brought that up. So, and I know several lovely vegans, don't get me wrong. But the joke is that honestly, I felt that this is the editor's fault and I blame them for it. If I wanted to read as much detailed medical terminology as was in this book, I would have picked up a medical textbook, and I'm not sure what the point was except for Dr. Verghese to show off, quite frankly.
He wanted to show
it was off-putting. It was off-putting.
He wanted to share next with you or show off with you.
Since I have read only 269 pages, it is not possible for me to give a complete review. So I'm going to pass.
Okay. So I just finished the book yesterday because I wanted desperately to finish it. And so I would rather have written this whole thing down because now there's too much for me to think about. But what I do think was, firstly, I thought it was a very dark book. Okay, it was very dark. And it reminded me a lot of Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, which everyone loved it because she painted every picture. She's a beautiful writer, but yet, she would make comments like, I went into a marriage like I would have gone into the in an airport, which with a seat empty, I just walked into it. So everything was very sad, everything was very dark. And I think the only humor, as Tejo said, or somebody mentioned, was in that big convention of this. That was the only funny part. So whereas I had laughed so much in that chemistry book, there was no laughing in this book at all. It was very serious. But there are things that I learned so much from this book. Firstly, about Kerala. And I loved the backwater scenery and, the life of Kerala. But I did feel that there was so much sorrow and sadness all the time. Even, was it water that was bringing it? I don't know. But it was, the coming of all the waters and everything. Sometimes I feel that was what was, I don't know, there was so much unhappiness in the book. The tragedies. When was there time to smile? I don't know. Except there was no. And then the other thing that really caught my eyes, because he was a fantastic writer and narrator. Every word he writes you can picture. And this came about especially when the Naxalite, when I was reading the Naxalite part of that attack on Arakat and Lenin, how they came to Sivaraman house because he was desperate to eat something. But Lenin said, I'm not going. He tied himself to a tree. It was like a Tamil movie or any movie. You could actually picture the drama. It was getting so much. So I really felt that was, everything in the book you could picture. He wrote so beautifully. And to me, someone mentioned that he was a very staunch Christian. Of course he is. But I feel he was an evolved human being for the fact that he, at one point, he says that, at the end, Mariamma says that anyway, all is one, and each one of us, and our lives are only an illusion or Maya, so that he has brought in really absolute Vedanta and Hinduism into it. So as you evolve, you also, I think in every religion, if you evolve to an extent, you will start realizing that everything is one. And the other thing which I felt some sad part of it when he was dying, when father was dying, and then he says, oh, can you just hold this? I just want, okay. He says, I'm at the edge of my world, he thinks. This is as far as I will go when he's going to die. And he says, what stamp? Each left their stamp, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the English. All have gone, shades. Their cemeteries are overgrown with weeds, the names unreadable, weathered by the wind. What stamp will he leave? What will be his masterpiece? He knows only one answer, and that is Mariamma. So I felt so sad for him when he says these things. He's gone through so much sorrow. But it was a beautiful book. I read it, and I loved reading the 700 pages. But I sincerely suggest we don't have such a big book in future for our reading. But on the other hand, I would never have read it if it had not been for the book club. So I'm very happy to have read it.
Let me just say, I enjoyed reading the book. And yeah, I agree with everyone who says that I thought it was a tad too long. For me, Parambil and the entire world that has been described by Dr. Abraham Verghese is very, very familiar. My mother comes from one such area in central Travancore. My grandmother's place and stuff like this, I can see everything. And I grew up in a place like Gwendolen Gardens, the estate. So for me, the two things really did come together, apart from the fact that I did do my college and rest of the world, rest of my life is Chennai. So that's the first part. When you say that, can there be so much tragedy in a family? Unfortunately, yes. I don't think he's made up too much of it. I mean, he's given a disease the condition, and which we read about at the end, how it comes about. The deaths, yes, that happens all the time. And I think amongst a lot of families in central Travancore, Syrian Christians as well as the Hindus, you find there are a lot of special needs people there. And that is an absolute truth. Yes, you do. I don't know why. It can be, yes, because of the, inbreeding and all those kind of things. But unfortunately, it is a fact of life. Of course, with certain parts of the, certain things, it was almost, I felt, many of the things led to a logical end. You sort of knew that Elsie was alive, she was doing something. And it's inevitable that the only place she can hide out and be totally away from is in a leprosy place. And I should say this, that when I was a kid, I read a Reader's Digest book called Miracle at Carville. And it's one of those books which made such an impression on me, because again, this is about a leprosy sanatorium somewhere in the US. And I remember one thing, which was when the heroine of the book is diagnosed with leprosy, the doctor asks, one of the questions he asks her is, do you scratch your ear? And every time I scratch my ear, which is often, I just think, oh God! What is that? So, no, anyway, but a few years back, doctor in the police, I told her about this. So she said, no, there are so many other characteristics by which you can always make out if you're heading towards it. She says, this isn't the only one. So after that, I scratched my ear with great glee. So that's the aside from this. But lot of things that have been described. If you see about Lenin going and, his part of the story. Yeah, we had Ajita and other people doing their bit in North Malabar and towards the central at the same time. And the fear of people that were the Naxalites, very much so in the estates. It was very much like this. And what happened, when they went to Shivaraman's house, yes, that's also very much something that I could kind of relate to, because he's done a lot and it's showing through too. And of course, Big Ammachi is the real heroine of the whole thing, but I feel even the others were, after all, there were things that came through with Dolly ko Chama and Decency ko Chama and Odatu ko Chama and even Uplift Master, and Koshi Sir. All these people made their own difference to the book. And there are two things that I thought somebody would have already said, but now it's come to me. I liked what Koshi Sir says. It's really to Moby Dick, but fiction is the great lie that tells the truth about how the world lives.
Yes, that's a very nice.
Yeah, I like that. Said it, yeah. And I liked what Big Ammachi tells Philippos. She says, well, Koshi Sir may not believe in God, but it's a good thing that God believes in that old man. Why else did he send him into your life? Because that made the world of difference to Philippos. And I guess it was I would say all in all, it was a good read. Could have been shorter. That's the thing.
Okay.
Do you have time? No, 2 minutes only. See, I've only done half of it. Yeah, I have just done half of it. And I didn't know there was Nexalism coming and she will become sick. I have not reached that part yet. So, no, it's okay, but I will complete. I am from Trivandrum, having lived in under the Travancore Maharaja. So far I felt, oh, how come he has missed so much of what should be there? But apparently it will come later. Apparently it will come later. So it should come later. But this was the time when Kerala was going, that is, Travancore was going through a very difficult period. After Second World War, there was a famine. When first time they brought Maricini into Kerala. Do you know there was no food, rice at all? Maricini was imported into Kerala. Then it became their staple food. There was a lot of communism was growing. Later on it became, the feudalism was so high, casteism was so bad that people couldn't even, that Vakyam Satyagraham where he participated, Mahatma Gandhi participated, they couldn't even come into the street leading to the temple. Then they talk very good terms about how Maharaja of Travancore, whatever Tirunal it is, he gave that temple entry proclamation. But when you read Ivory Tower, you will hear the other side of it. Even my parents from Kerala, he used to say, no, Raja was just a Raja like any other place. He had his own things. Overnight, he came and destroyed a whole place so that he could build with the palace and a road leading to the palace. It was all there. This was a very turbulent period. When I read, so far there is no turbulence of that coming into the story. How can we escape it? It is there all around you. Kuttanadu, okay, that's where Satyagraham happened, that's where Punnapra Vayalar happened. Nothing has come so far. Apparently it will come later on. Let me see whether see, Punnapra Vayalar, you cannot escape it. There is Divan Bharanam. Where is all that? Divan Bharanam is the C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer he was the Divan in Travancore and he was a dictator. So, see, he was hated. They tried to kill him 2 times or 3 times. He escaped. He was very fortunate. Now, the thing is, see, we can look at it from 2 sides because he was employed by the royalty, not by the freedom fighters. Okay, so he supported the Maharaja. He wanted Travancore to become an independent state and not join the union. All this, that's all different history. But all that we miss. However, and like you said, I didn't look at my book. I've left it 15,000 times and never picked it up. Now, the thing I found very charming very interesting was, it's very difficult to write in a language, alien language, an alien culture. Whereas imagine an Englishman or an English public reading this book. But amazingly written. I could see Amachi, I could see the villa of their houses. I could see that kuchini and dark insides, everything. And the language, somehow he brought Malayalam into English. Perfect Malayalam, but how he could bring it, I just don't know. Then talking about Christians, they are very deeply Christian. Okay, they have come from St. Thomas' time. So when Christianity spread beyond Constantinople, they were already there in Kerala. Okay, that's a very deep culture. They talk in Dakartave, that's where they start. They talk Christianity. All that is brought about very well. And let me see how he goes on to Nexalism, because Kerala Nexalism really interests me. Because I really appreciate that Ajita. Very bad, but I really feel she was, they were different, they were idealists. They looked for idealism, Pulayar, how they were treated, they were not allowed to cover their upper body. Women were asked to go around like that. It was a cruel society. My grandmother will tell stories and stories, So it is not a very, things have changed. Kerala is a very highly educated state. People were very much aware. But we have learned of Ramakrishna Pilla where he was exiled. We have learned all that in Kerala. So it is everything has to be taken with a dollop of salt, whatever, read, and it's nice. He has managed. He is a typical NRI who sits in a comfortable bed and thinks nostalgically about That's what he did.
Pulayas, I have not.
Pulayar. 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 Yeah. They were Pulayamma. Yeah. They were laborers. They were not bonded laborers. They were laborers. So they will not have any land.
I sort of guessed that.
Yeah. There is a very famous poem written by G. Shankara Pillai. Okay.
One person, the person who takes over, he eats with Mariamma and that's when they show the difference of
Times. There is a poem written by G. Shankara Kurupar. He has written that the child in the front of their house, I don't know whether it's a poem or a short story, I don't remember now. The child will go, there will be a banana tree, there will be a kola on that is the plantain, okay. He will say, Acha, when can I have the fruit? That's how it starts. It will come, Mone, it will come. So this 10 months, the child waits for that. 10th day, the tambran comes. Just cuts it and takes it. This is, do you know, I remember, I even get goosebumps now. That was Kerala. That was Kerala. It's not. Tambran is a landlord. Landlord.
Yeah, okay.
So I started reading this book, and after about 80 pages or so, 80 or 100 or something, I decided I had to listen to it because I found my arms were paining to hold such a big fat book. Yeah, and then once I started listening to him, I had my book next to me anyway just to follow along. It was brilliant. I thought the way this man enunciated all the words, how he followed the accents of various people, totally brilliant. It brought the story alive for me. I loved the first few pages best in this book because it explores the concept of the child bride, with her innocence, having lost her father, leaving her mother. All of that was described in such a way I felt a great empathy for it. I could understand it. I loved her citing the new house that she's going to be in. I loved her adventures into the cellar and talking to the ghost of the ex-wife. And all of that stuff was really, really fun. And then I found that the thing hopped from one story to another story to another story. And I couldn't really tell what is the difference. And it was very, very late in the book when all of these stories were actually connected together. And I found that a little bit perturbing, let's say, because it left too many threads hanging. But then it sort of came together, and the end was, hang on, I need to shut this. Oh, it shut up. And then at the end, the story of Mariamma and her discovering her mother sitting on the lawn, that was made me feel really heartbroken. And the way she comes and puts her stumpy hands at the screen on the glass, all of that was a tearjerker as far as I was concerned. Overall, this book, I've never read anything like this in the sense that so many individual stories so deftly tied together, albeit after a very, very, very long time. It left me feel impatient, and I did a lot of moving ahead, reading ahead kind of stuff. But it's not the kind of book that you can read ahead successfully because you lost a lot in the telling of the story of the individuals. So it sort of forced you to go in sequence. I love the English. I love the fact there's so many tidbits thrown in about Kerala and the Times and old Chennai Times and Madras Presidency and the British Times and all of that. Yes, yeah, all of that was really educational, I should say. Overall, I enjoyed the book. The one thing that I was thinking was nobody laughs in this book. There is no lightness in this book.
One minute I'll interrupt, okay? It's very much so. We used to say in a Malayali Christian wedding, nobody smiles. Seriously, they'll all be very serious. They'll be like this. What you said, I don't know whether this baby moon.
Right, she does. But she's not altogether there. She's not. Somebody mentioned Arundhati Roy, the god of little things. This does remind me a lot about it. It's the same kind of, unrelenting drudge, a difficulty, misery. And if everybody's life is like this, gosh, how would we actually go through it? But it is like that. Yeah, it is. I'm sure. Yes. Yeah, and then there was this mansion she described, and you walk down and you can remember happier times and all of that. So, in this thing, there was no remembrance of happier times either. So, that was a little bit of very, very sad. So, anyways, listening to him was brilliant. I'd highly recommend listening to him. He's just brilliant. And if he does go, if you do host him on Instagram, please post on this group. I'll be watching.
I hope. I've never done an audio book in my life.
Post it on the group. A link to Audible. It's a subscription.
Okay. Hey, okay. Quickly, I'll do the quick. Hi, this is Sundari. I enjoyed reading this book. I just had to finish it. The 790 pages was a breeze. After many months, I'm reading a book that I loved. I was drawn to all the main characters. Each had a unique appeal. Even the nurse, I think her name is Honorarium or something? Honorarium. My favorite was the patriarch. The first night with Ammachi after she comes of age was written with so much of tenderness and feeling. Maybe it brought back memories of my childhood, the youngest of 8. My parents were old for that generation when I was born, and I don't think they ever had a bedroom to themselves. So that's how it was. That was beautiful. And then Elsie having leprosy didn't feel contrived. And somehow for me the story flowed very smoothly, and thank you, Lakshmi. I enjoyed the book after a long time. Thank you. There's just one, nobody has read this description of Kerala, which is really beautiful. The land is shaped by water and its people united by a common language, Malayalam. Where the sea meets white beach, it thrusts fingers inland to intertwine with the river snaking down the green, canopied slopes of the Ghats. It is a child's fantasy of rivulets and canals, a lattice of lakes and lagoons, a maze of backwaters and bottle green lotus ponds, a vast circulatory system because all water is connected. I think this was beautiful.
Well, being the last, there's not much to say except that it, as a book, he didn't miss out on too many emotions. He scanned caste, child marriage, medical procedures. Also, the caste was not only in India but in England because of Digby. He was discriminated against as a medical student. So I thought that was significant, the way that, but it all dovetailed. And then the horrors of leprosy, and it was very Catholic in its way because he did bring religion in always, but he pulled at the emotions of everyone with the death of Jojo and Nina. I don't know, that was stretched. It was much too long, much too long. I don't know that we needed to have a medical experience on every procedure, but I liked the way that when the 12-year-old married to the 40-year-old man, they finally consummate. It was a very touching and subtle, and he waited 5 years at least, so that was also good. And I think you only really, after reading the first couple of 100 pages, go to the last couple of 100 pages, and it all comes together. Well, there are, but you know, but they do finally, I think, come dovetail at the end. He brought it all, because you wondered how, I mean, Digby was going to end up. I mean, he disappeared for quite a while, and then Esme.
None of us talked about that part. You talked about Digby. None of us talked about that Digby part. Beginning we had Digby. That Digby part. Glasgow. The Glasgow and that part. None of us talked about. Yes. That's you know. We talked to Christmas on this book. That is important. So what did I feel there?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Last but not least,
You see the blank?
he's going to read the last couple of hundred pages.
I promise. I haven't.
You have read the last few pages.
No, I haven't read the last few pages because people are telling me to read it from page 1. Unlike what I normally do. Anyway, it sounds like. It sounds epic.